Good evening and welcome to the May 25th, 2022 meeting of the East Lansing Planning Commission. Mr. Menzer, would you please call roll?
I will. 1 second, sorry. There we go. Chair Bullman.
Present.
Vice Chair Sullivan.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Wolf.
Here.
Commissioner Lapine.
Here.
Commissioner Wagner is currently absent. Commissioner Hendricks will not be here tonight. So we have 5 for a quorum.
Thank you. You have in front of you, or it was in your packet, a copy of the agenda for this evening's meeting. I'd entertain a motion to approve that agenda.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Commissioner Williams and seconded by Commissioner Wolf to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That motion carries. Also in your packet was a copy of the minutes of the May 11th, 2022 meeting of the Planning Commission. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
And second. It's been moved by Commissioner Williams and seconded by Commissioner Wolf to approve the minutes as presented. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That motion carries. We have no committees, no committee reports. That brings us on to item 3, staff reports. Mr. Menzer.
Good evening. Just a couple things for you tonight. We have I did transmit a letter to City Council. I mistakenly did not include it in your meeting packet tonight. It was from our chairperson of the Planning Commission to Council, really summarizing the discussion that was held at the April 27 meeting about housing in the northern tier and housing potentially on the city-owned Coleman West property. The commission, or council did discuss the topic at their discussion-only meeting on the 17th, last Tuesday night, and they expressed general support for an update to the master plan and the future land use map to consider housing. The discussion is evolving and ongoing on the city-owned parcel at Pullman and West. I think the message about housing was loud and clear. It's really all the devil in the details of what, how much, where, what exactly, what type. So that discussion will continue. There was a request to draft a request for proposals to consider different developers and look at projects that they may have done that check some of the boxes that the City Council is looking for. So staff is preparing that, and certainly I'll share it with the Planning Commission when that does happen. I also share that letter that went to the council that I mistakenly did not include in this packet with you via email, and I'll post it in the next meeting packet so everyone can see it. So ultimately the city will be looking for a partner to develop that property, and residential may or may not be in the future of that project. I think there's general support for residential in some form, but just how exactly that would happen is ongoing discussion. I do want to thank Ms. Heather Pope. She's here with us tonight. If you notice someone different at the helm, she's filling in for Rebecca, so she's here with us tonight running the Zoom. So thanks, Heather. And that's all I've got for you right now.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Menzer? All right then. That'll move us on to item 4. Do any commissioners have any announcements they wish to make? I will input that we have 2 applications for the vacancies on the commission, and we're going to be interviewing them ideally within the next couple weeks so that we can start to fill some of the vacancies that we have. Anything else? All right, then on to item 5, communications from citizens. We have no written communications pertaining to anything that's not an agenda item. So this is the time when the commission would invite members of the public to come forward and make comments on any items that are on our agenda or just items that would require the attention of the Planning Commission. We typically ask that if you're going to make comments on the public hearing this evening, that you hold those until the time that item is on our agenda. And I will remind those of you that are in attendance now and were in attendance last week, or 2 weeks ago, that the public hearing for the property at 321 East Grand River remains open, and so we'll take comments. We'll continue to take public comments on that item, again, preferably at the time when that's presented as our old business item. That said, is there anybody who wishes to make comments to the Planning Commission? I do have one card for Mr. Carroll, but I'm presuming that it has to do with 321 East Grand River, and you prefer to wait until? Thank you, appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else? I don't see anybody present. Ms. Pope, if there's anybody waiting online that we could invite them to join us?
Nope, there's no one online.
Okay, thank you. That completes our communications from citizens and moves us on to item 6, public hearings. This is our only public hearing of this evening. Item 6.1, this is the consideration of a special use permit and site plan application to construct 2 commercial buildings and install a drive-through window at 1601 West Lake Lansing Road. Mr. Menzer.
Thank you, Chairperson Bowman.
Absolutely.
So tonight is the public hearing for a request to redevelop the property at 1601 West Lake Lansing Road, to construct a removal of the existing building on the site and develop 2 commercial buildings, one of those with a drive-through window that would serve a restaurant. So just a very brief reminder, everything that I'm going over tonight can be found in your meeting packet, certainly for those in attendance, but those at home watching the meeting online or maybe watching later, you can find the meeting packet on the city's website at cityofeastlansing.com. You'll want to navigate to the public meetings tab, and you'll find there's a calendar there that you can go to tonight's on the calendar and find the agenda, the minutes, everything for tonight. So in that meeting packet, there's a staff memorandum from me summarizing the request, and what I'm going to do now is just very briefly go over that memo. You'll also find in the meeting packet the application materials for this project. That includes the application itself, along with all the relevant plans and any other supplemental materials that the applicant submitted. So without further ado, I'll very briefly go over this request. So as I said, this is a special use permit and site plan approval to demolish the existing building and just construct 2 new buildings. One is approximately 2,400 square feet. That would be a restaurant with a drive-through window. The other is a 4,200 square foot medical office building. The property is zoned B5. That's one of our commercial zoning districts. It's called Community Retail Sales Business District. So right now there is one building on the site. It was the Spartan Hall of Fame Cafe. It's a 9,573 square foot restaurant. It was originally a Damon's restaurant. It was that was built in 1995. And actually that property and the property to the south were developed at the same time back in 95 and 96, or in 95. And that's an office building to the south. So just wanted to cut right to the chase here, I guess. The applicant's proposing to demolish the current building. The office building to the south would remain. They would build 2 buildings on the site. The reason they're before you tonight is site plan needs approval from Planning Commission and City Council, and then the special use permit would be for the drive-through window on the restaurant building. The review process very generally is a Planning Commission public hearing. Planning Commission will take 2 meetings, so tonight's the public hearing. Typically at the following meeting, the Planning Commission will make a recommendation on the request, and then it would be forwarded to City Council with the information that the Planning Commission saw and a recommendation from the Planning Commission. We would then schedule a public hearing with City Council. That is at a date to be determined. I don't have a date for that yet, but at the next meeting, we probably will have a solid date for that, depending on the conversation tonight. Special use permits are good for 1 year. If they do expire, the applicant has an opportunity to request a 1-year extension, a one-year extension. Master plan category for this site, it's designated as M3, mixed use 3. As I said, the zoning is B5. There are 6 standards of review for the site plan. Those are noted in the staff memorandum. I won't go over those tonight. Nothing particularly jumped out at me in terms of non-conformance with the ordinance for the project as proposed. You'll see that the city's Department of Public Works and Environmental Services reviewed the traffic letter that was provided. It was a traffic impact statement and didn't note any concerns about it or any significant impacts on the existing operation of the traffic in that area. Nothing specifically new is proposed that would deviate from what's currently out there. Site served by public utilities, the capacity is considered adequate for this new development. The project it does qualify or is not exempt from the public art requirement. So the applicant will be donating 1% of the project Estimated project costs are about $7,000 to the Public Art Fund, and that's in lieu of erecting an artwork on the site. Instead, there would be a donation. Parking, provided quite a bit of information about parking. So right now, there's 180 parking spaces that are shared between both sites. And at this point, these are separate properties, so we're treating them separately, despite the fact that they were approved together back in the mid-90s. At this point, they're owned separately and operate independently of one another. So, but there are going to be ultimately cross-access agreements between both properties, but they won't be sharing parking. And actually, the applicant can enlighten you on that. Resurfacing and reconfiguring the lot in the front to provide 84 parking spaces. And in the memo, I do break down kind of the requirements for each of those spaces. But between the two uses, a total of 59 parking spaces are required. So you'll note that what's being provided is greater than what's being what is required. So the city does have an ordinance that prohibits excessive parking and excessive paving. So anytime you have a parking lot that's 50 parking spaces or more, the development would be limited to 1.25 times the minimum parking requirement, or ultimately to 74 spaces. So that's over the maximum. So in this case, the applicant would need to request a waiver to exceed that amount. The ordinance provides for a waiver when the applicant can demonstrate one of four things here. So the following factors: employee, customer, tenant, or visitor demands, regular seasonal peak demands, potential conversion or potential conversion of part or all of the property to a use which has a higher parking requirement, and potential congestion of safety hazards either on-site or along adjacent public streets. I have advised the applicant to provide some information on that request before your next meeting. So that we also, we have a bicycle parking requirement. So the ordinance requires one bicycle parking space for each 10 required parking spaces. So the applicant is providing the 6 required bicycle parking spaces on the site. And also we have the city has a requirement for electric vehicle charging stations. So anytime a parking lot has 50 or greater spaces, so this lot has 59 spaces, so they're required to do at least one of these electrical vehicle charging stations, and it is shown on the plan. So shifting now to the special use permit, there are 7 standards of review for the special use permit. Again, there's nothing specific that I've noted that deviates far beyond the standards, but in both cases for the site plan and special use permit, that's not my decision to make, so I'm just telling you I haven't read anything that does not conform to the ordinance specifically. Just want to touch on that. And that's it. So you'll see in your memo you'll see in the packet there is a review memo from the Deputy Director of our Public Works and Engineering and Environmental Services Department. Really technical details on parking and utilities. I am available to answer any questions. The applicant is here tonight to provide some more information on the project and to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Menzer? All right, then. I'm sorry, Commissioner Wolf, thank you.
Yes. I have a question about sidewalks. It's been our practice to require that the city sidewalk be connected to the interior of a lot with another sidewalk. Now, this property has not had that. It was approved before we were doing that for all new projects. And I would like to see it in the revised project. It would mean they would need to put in a north-south sidewalk coming in from the sidewalk along Lake Lansing Road to some point within the parking lot. So the point is that anyone who approaches the property walking on the sidewalk should not have to walk in the driveway in order to get to the building. That's the reason we've been doing that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I'll ensure that gets added.
I have another sidewalk
Please.
question.
Yep. Continue. Yep.
Question, which is unfortunately much harder to explain. I think there is a missing sidewalk connection that should be there within the site plan. Let me see if I can tell you where to find this. If you look at, there's two buildings there, the medical office and the drive-through restaurant. If you look at the gap between them, there's a, I don't know, 20 feet between them. There is a sidewalk there that runs north-south, and it terminates in an east-west sidewalk at the south end. Okay, you see that?
Yep.
Then right there, if you continue to the south, on the other side of the drive-through lane, there is what I believe is another stub of a sidewalk to allow people to walk north out of the parking lot towards the buildings. It's almost directly below that sidewalk that runs between the buildings.
Okay.
Do you see that?
I'm not sure.
Okay, you see, on the one I'm looking at, it has, there's text. It says proposed electric transformer
Yes.
concrete pad. You
Yep, I see that.
Right under the F and the O in transformer,
The little connector.
there's a little connector, which I'm pretty sure is intended for where pedestrians would walk
Drain.
from the parking lot across the drive-through lane. But once they get to the north side of that, there is no connector sidewalk shown. So I'd like to know if that is truly what that sidewalk is for, and shouldn't there be a continuation of it on the north side?
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the applicant will be able to answer that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd
I
bring it up
actually,
now.
I read it differently, so he'll be able to provide some clarification on that. Any other questions for Mr. Menzer?
No.
Okay. Oop, sorry, Vice Chair.
I was just a little confused by something I saw in the report. On page 25, on the north-facing parking spots, it says 2 proposed burrito loading zone spaces.
I had the same
No idea what that
question.
means.
I was going to wait and see if the applicant was going to answer that.
Okay.
We Googled if that was a thing.
Yeah. So 2 proposed burrito loading zone spaces.
That actually tells you what the restaurant
Yeah.
is.
I thought that might be the case. Just don't normally see that.
No.
All right, we'll ask the applicant about that as well. Any other questions for Mr. Menzer? Good catch. In that case, if the applicant would like to come forward and either append to Mr. Menzer's presentation, or maybe we can start with the question regarding the sidewalk extension and burrito parking. And if you would start with your name and spell it just so we can add it to the record, please.
Absolutely. Mitchell Harvey, MITCHELLHARVEY. I'm with Stonefield Engineering. Our address is 607 Shelby Street, Detroit, Michigan. Mr. Menzer did a good job of, covering the whole project, so I won't go into too much detail. But, basically we're looking to redevelop the Hall of Fame Cafe site over on Lake Lansing Road. The existing building is 9,545 square feet. We'll be tearing that down, and the idea will be to replace that with a 4,272 medical office or urgent care clinic, and the other building being a restaurant with drive-through at 2,432 square feet. We're proposing 85 parking spaces across the site, as well as 12 total stacking spaces, meeting the requirements of the ordinance. Access to the site will be essentially through that same ring road that comes off of Lake Lansing Road, so we'll not be proposing any new curb cuts onto the road. The site will be well landscaped. We're proposing 31 new trees throughout the site, and we're actually increasing the total green space across the balance of the site by 6,000 square feet. Site lighting is going to be provided by 6 high-efficiency, full cutoff LED area lights. And then the building facade itself will be a mixture of masonry brick, stone, dry-vit, and then metal architectural elements. The front of the building will also have a significant amount of glazing, and then all rooftop mechanical units will be fully screened from view by the parapet. So as designed, we believe that the site meets the special land use criteria. It won't have a significant negative impact on the surrounding neighbors. We've provided a traffic study to show that by replacing a sit-down restaurant with these users here, you're really going to have an extremely minimal impact on the surrounding traffic generation of the site. And we believe that the proposal is consistent with the surrounding community and will be a good fit here. So to answer the questions, I'll start with the burrito loading zone. So the tenant for the restaurant with drive-through is a Chipotle, and what they have is they kind of have a few options for food pickup. The drive-through lane actually functions more of a pickup lane where you order your food on the app, you go enter the drive-through lane, you pick it up like that. Another option that they have introduced to their customers is the burrito loading zone, as it's called. Basically, it's you park your car, you run in, grab your burrito, it's ready to go. It's not where you're ordering in the building. It's your food's already ready. Similar to what you've seen with Starbucks, where you pay for it on your phone, order it on your phone, and pick it up. So that's what those spaces are denoted as. The sidewalk question, the two parts to that. I think that's a really good comment, bringing the sidewalk in from Lake Lansing Road. We'll definitely add that to our site plan. I think that really will help the pedestrian connectivity of the whole site. The little sidewalk piece that you mentioned, that's actually used for drainage. So what we did is, instead of put a catch basin there, we put a curb cut, and that allows that little bit of water that would be in the drive-through lane to sheet flow down and into a catch basin that's a little further south. And that's how we are able to kind of keep the existing drainage pattern on site by utilizing that.
So that means that anyone who parks in the south parking lot has to walk over to the sidewalk on the west end in order to get to either one of the buildings?
That's the idea, to kind of not push people towards the drive-through lane. We don't anticipate a ton of stacking in the drive-through lane. Generally, they have anywhere from 3 to 6. Just the way the site laid out, we were able to get 12. But we'd be happy to stub that sidewalk across, and it can kind of serve as two purposes: a kind of drainage channel as well as a sidewalk, if that's what you guys wish.
Seems inevitable to me that for some people who park on the south side, they are going to want to take that route, but I suppose it's probably okay the way it is on here. Most who are going into the restaurant will certainly try to park in front. I suspect the southern part of the lot will largely be employee parking.
Yeah, that's the idea. But we'd be happy to put that sidewalk there. I think it's 25 extra square feet of sidewalk that we would add, and it's a simple fix there. And then, if I can just jump in on parking.
Of course.
So I know we're a little over parked here, and one thing that's driving that is the medical office. So it's called a Well Now Urgent Care, and really I believe the ordinance specifies 26 spaces for this size of a medical office. And what they have seen is they really try to hit more of 35 to 40 spaces just for their site. So that with the drive-through is what's driving the 85 spaces, and that's kind of why we arrived at that number, is to more meet, we know we're over ordinance demands, and normally we're asking for less parking than what the ordinance demands, but in this case, it's really based on the tenants, is making sure they have enough parking for them to feel comfortable, and so they can, service all their guests.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Harvey? Commissioner Williams?
You mentioned the traffic impact statement, and I also noticed there were no concerns raised there, but we did have a concern expressed by a citizen in terms of the safety or concerns about safety coming in and out of the property, suggesting maybe a right turn only when exiting the property. I've been in and out of there lots of times when it's been different restaurants over the years, and I thought it was really awkward to get to and get out of, especially if somebody thinks they're going to try to turn left and get onto northbound 127. have any reaction to that?
Yeah, so I saw that comment, and what I think what we can do here is to provide some more directional signage for people entering and exiting the site, just how to get out of the site the proper way. I think we can't restrict the access onto Lake Lansing Road to right turn only. I think that's actually off our site, so that would be difficult. But by providing some signage, do not enter right, through and left and that kind of thing. I think we can, really provide a clear direction for people trying to get in and out of the site via signage that'll help kind of direct people around. And we've added another curb cut up front that'll also kind of split the exit. So you'll have some people that want to take the southern curb cut and go over to Coolidge Road, and then you'll have some people that want to take the northern to get on Lake Lansing. So I think it'll kind of alleviate the current curb cut by splitting it into two.
I think that's how it's sort of current, but having been there reasonably frequently, you leave from the southern, what you're calling the southern curb cut, or there's an island, or sort of divided into a boulevard, so you actually can't go toward Lake Lansing immediately. Presumably you can go south and back up, but yeah, I think it seems to me that you go out to Coolidge and then make your left turn onto Lake Lansing from Coolidge.
Yeah, and I think people find that's the easiest route of traffic, and
I think your comment about some signage or something like that wouldn't, sort of, like in Michigan, right, we go right to go left. Maybe that's something that wouldn't hurt to remind people of.
Yeah, we'll definitely provide those on the revised plans, kind of define exactly what those signs will say and where they're located. We'll locate those on the site plan.
Okay,
Thanks, I think that would be helpful.
absolutely. Commissioner Wolf?
I guess that covered what I was going to say anyway, so.
You good? Okay, any other, Vice Chair, please.
Yeah, just briefly. Medical office is a pretty broad term. Could you speak a little bit more about what specifically that will be, or have those arrangements been finalized?
Yeah, so right now they're looking at, it's a company called WellNow Urgent Care. If you're familiar with Aspen Dental at all, this is Aspen Dental's version of an urgent care clinic. So, they do COVID testing. They're not performing surgery there, but, they standard urgent care stuff that, you cut your finger, they can, put a Band-Aid on it and, make sure your more serious issues are escalated to, hospitals and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I do have one more clarification. I'm pretty sure this is what you said, but I just wanted to know for sure. I think you're saying that all of the pickup orders have to be done online, so there is no exterior ordering station, correct?
Yeah, correct. If you actually look on our site plan, normally we would include speaker box, menu board,
Exactly, yeah.
but it's not part of their operations. They actually don't want that as part of their operations. So they don't have any menu or order board. There may be a small advertisement kind of thing, pull ahead for Burrito or whatever, but besides that, there's no order point.
Yeah, I think that could be a big help in reducing the stacking, because they don't have to stop earlier and build up a line that's going to extend out into the parking lot.
Exactly, and the ones that we've done, it's been really efficient because people are ordering on their phones more and more often, and the idea is for them not to even enter that stacking until their food's ready, and so they can go right up to the window, bang, already paid. Here's your burrito, and they're gone. Whereas a typical drive-through, you have order point, sometimes you even have a pay point, then you have a pickup point, and that queue can get pretty long. So this, it's a pretty efficient, quick queue.
So you think they would actually stay in the parking lot in their car until they're notified it's ready? Is that
That's the idea. A lot of people, if they live closer, like 5-minute drive, I imagine they would just sit at home, wait until our burrito's ready, I'll go pick it up, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's encouraging, actually. I'm not a great fan of drive-throughs, but it sounds to me like there's no sort of, not going to be speaker noise, and that presumably they'll be waiting for them when they get there. They won't have to, most fast food places are pretty quick anyway, but it's So that even the sort of custom stuff is going to be ready to go when they get to the window.
Yeah.
Ideally.
And it was really how because, they do custom orders. You order your bowl with specific meat, guacamole, various cheeses.
Sure.
So it's kind of hard to make to order as
Right.
you're in that quick turnaround time. So that's why they came out with this model.
Clever.
So,
Sorry.
I'm just trying to picture this. So if someone gets in the pickup line too soon, they could cause problems, right?
Well, then they go to the burrito loading zone. And
No,
you
but I
got to
mean,
put,
if
you
they
got
did,
to,
if they weren't paying attention, or they were in a hurry and decided to get in the line before they'd been notified,
yeah, so
they
then
could cause problems for the people behind them.
it could, but the idea they'd come up to the window, hey, your food's not ready, it's going to be 30 seconds. All right, then they'd wait there. Your food's not ready, it's going to be 5 minutes. Please pull ahead
okay.
and come in, and we'll,
Got
or recirculate, get in the back of the line kind of thing.
Yep.
That's clever. That's what the millennials can do. Commissioner Lapine.
This could be a question for Mr. Mesner. I'm genuinely curious because you have the unfortunate blessing where I work for the hospital association. So talking about this urgent care clinic has got me thinking, are there certain kinds of requirements that we have for parking in the event that you have an ambulance that has to come and take transport to Sparrow from urgent care? I mean, is there specific signage? I would imagine you have something that says don't park here. You have to be equipped to have an ambulance come to an urgent care. Are there different requirements for that type of
Yeah,
thing?
I don't think our zoning ordinance speaks to that specifically. It's usually just the number of spaces, but I can do a check and let you
Okay.
know.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, if you can just stick close in case there are
Absolutely.
questions from
Thanks
the
for your
public.
time.
Yeah. Now I'll open the public hearing for this application. I will note, as Commissioner Williams has indicated, that we have a letter from Nan Jackson regarding access to the traffic, or lack of access to traffic, I guess, or easy access to traffic onto Lake Lansing. But now I'll invite any members of the public who would like to come forward and make a comment on or ask questions regarding this application to please come forward. Mr. Loomis, how are you?
Good evening.
Good.
I'm Vic Loomis, a resident of the city of East Lansing and president of the Jody Pentecost Foundation. Jody Pentecost Foundation is the owner of the other building that is on this site. With me tonight is our executive director, Rita Stoskopf. Rita has been the executive director of Jody Pentecost for an extended number of years and is certainly familiar with the usage of this property. I have a question of staff. I couldn't quite hear on the parking. Is there a requirement for a shared parking agreement? And let me explain why. Since the inception of this project, and as Peter mentioned, it was all done and built at the same time, we've enjoyed a shared parking agreement with the owner of the adjacent property, Spartan Hall of Fame and its predecessor. And we certainly look forward to entering into a shared parking agreement with the new owners as they build out this project, should they get appropriate approval from the city of East Lansing. Our concern, however, is the spacing of parking between the north side of our building and the south side of the proposed buildings going on the new location would become very tight if there is not a shared parking agreement, particularly with the size of some of today's vehicles. We have some pretty large vehicles. There are 3 tenants in the Jody Pentecost building. Our foundation office is there. We have a Sparrow medical office facility, so similar usage, I would suspect, to what they're proposing to put into one of the two buildings. And we have a second medical office practice in that building. So there is a lot of traffic. We have an appropriate number of handicap parking spaces, but still, a lot of people want to park closer to the facility to access it. And so that parking on what would be the north side of our building, the south side of this development, sometimes becomes pretty tight. If there is not a shared parking agreement, we're concerned that it would be almost impossible for vehicles parked in our parking spaces to be able to pull out and leave the property. So my question, and again, we want to have a mutual joint parking agreement. That's certainly our plan. It's worked appropriately, but if for some reason or another that can't be realized, and I apologize, I've forgotten all of the peculiarities of city ordinances, but is there a requirement for mutual parking agreement? How is that handled?
May I speak
Yeah,
to that?
Mr. Menzel's really pretty good at that. Thank you. Yes, of course.
Okay, I can speak to that, thanks. So there isn't a requirement that it happen. In our discussions with the applicant so far, we've certainly encouraged that. I mean, it certainly looks like that's the way that the site has been used. So I would encourage both a joint parking agreement as well as a cross-access agreement.
Right.
I'm not aware of and haven't seen any evidence that those exist now, but there might be. I don't know whether that's the case or not, because I do understand that they're under two different ownership groups. So the city can encourage it. I don't think that we're in a position to require that they give you that, but I think the two parties could negotiate that and settle on an agreement.
Thank you, and that's certainly our intent. I mean,
Sure.
that's been in place, but we're getting some questions from our tenants too about how this is all going to unfold in their parking, and particularly during the winter months and snow accumulation and whatever. Parking can become a challenge on that site. So that was my question. Thank you for.
Yeah, it does appear that in as much as there's a reduction in parking proposed, that there's going to be significantly more parking closer to your building than is currently in place, if I'm reading the site plan correctly, that they're moving, the new buildings are going to be moving significantly further north,
Right.
so that there will be
Right.
more, again, whether that's available to you or not, I guess, is
Well,
something that be
that's-
worked out between the property owners.
That's our question.
Sure.
and Appreciate Peter's answer.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other members of the, oops, I'm sorry,
Question
Mr.
actually
Loomis?
for him.
Yeah, Mr. Loomis, if you could take a question from the commission?
Yes, trying to make sure I understand your concern. I think you're saying you're concerned about the maneuvering room between
Yes.
the two rows of parking.
Yes.
I'll just point out that the width of the driveway there running between the two properties, between the parking, is shown as 20 feet, which meets our city standard for the width that's required in that situation. So we have that situation in many other parking lots around the city. It's not as though they've moved it super close to your parking spaces.
Well, in that particular area now, there is no parking on the
Right, I understand
northern
it's
side.
probably going to be a
Right.
reduction from what's there
Right.
right now. But what I'm saying is that it still meets our zoning requirements for parking lots to allow maneuvering room.
Okay. We're looking at the functionality of it too. And you do have some very big vehicles today that do take room to maneuver in and out of a space, particularly when, what's the average depth of a parking space? 10 feet?
20.
They're 20 feet also,
Of the actual space itself?
yes.
So you're saying there's 40 feet there?
There's another 20 feet between the parking
They're
spots.
parking between the two parking.
For the driveway
Okay.
that they can back out into.
All right.
So what I'm saying again is a very common situation in parking lots throughout the city. It meets our requirements for maneuverability,
Okay.
for what that's worth.
We'll double check that.
Thanks. All right, any other members of the public would like to address the commission regarding this application? Okay, I'm seeing no one come forward. Ms. Pope, has anybody joined us remote? Okay, thank you. That being the case, we'll close the public hearing regarding this application and return it to the commission. Is there anything else any other questions we have for the applicant or for staff before we move on? Okay. Mr. Harvey, we'll see you in a couple weeks, presumably. Thank you. And that will move us on to item 7.1. Our only item of old business. This is the special use permit and site plan to renovate the building at 321 East Grand River Avenue to establish a restaurant serving alcoholic beverages. I'll remind everybody that indeed the public hearing on this matter is still open, and so we'll take comments from the public after we hear a report from staff and any other additional comments from the applicant. Mr. Menzer.
Thank you very much. So the Planning Commission began the public hearing on this item at its meeting on the 11th of May. That continues tonight. And for those of you that were here, you'll remember we had an issue with quorum, and so we did start the meeting and came back to it, and so that's why the unique extended public hearing in this case. So this is just a very brief follow-up to the last time that we talked about this issue. So again, everything I'm referencing here is in the staff, the meeting packet for tonight, but just a couple items I wanted to talk about that were follow-ups from some of the comments and questions that took place at the public hearing that started on the 11th. So there's a lot of questions related to noise and music, or more concerns than questions, really. So I just do want to clarify, and the applicant is going to speak to this directly as well, that this is a fully enclosed building with the exception of the second-story outdoor seating area. So if you were standing in the alley looking from the back at the back of the building, you would see a brick enclosed building. The roof is brick, it's entirely enclosed with the exception of the door in the back. I believe there's a window in the stairwell in the back of the building. There's a proposed first floor ground level outdoor seating area that would be on the public sidewalk. And then on the second floor is this proposed outdoor area. And it's compared to the rest of the building, a small portion of the building, and it's actually not even completely open air. So I wanted to show. We'll try to figure this out. Actually, let's go back to that one. I'll run through everything else, and I was going to show you a couple of things that came in my email just late this afternoon that no one else has seen yet. So, and this is some details on the front that I think may help clarify some. Actually, let's do it now. But I have to figure out how to do it. So I'm an attendee on Zoom, so I am going to share my screen. If I can figure this out. I guess I need to raise my hand first. I have to be a panelist, thank you, to share my screen. Thanks, Heather. It's been a while since I've used Zoom.
In person.
It's gotta be, oh, there we go. So what I'm showing you, I recognize has not been seen by anyone in the room. This was some items I received this afternoon from the applicant, and they certainly, after I finish, can fill in. I don't know how well everyone's going to be able to see it, but I will certainly make it available. Not sure why that wouldn't show. Oh, this is going to be a disaster.
Hang in there.
Let's try this again.
There you
Okay, I
go.
may be able to page through that, maybe even better. So what you're seeing here is what I had requested from the applicant were some detailed sketches showing that showing that second floor eating area. To me, and I look at a lot of site plans, between the site plan and the rendering, it was just kind of hard to distinguish what exactly was going on the second floor. And it's something that I heard a lot of concern about, so I wanted to have some clarity. And I think that these are probably examples of how it may be. So what they're envisioning here is is an open area, is an area on the second floor that would be open at times, but winterized at times, but also used in off season.
So this is showing it when it is winterized, is that right?
That's correct.
So it has the shields or whatever.
Yeah,
they're
I guess what
calling
I'd like
them.
to do is may I ask one of the applicants to step up and kind of guide us through
Yeah.
these drawings?
Who better?
So I'll show them. How about I show them and you,
Thank you.
you talk them through it, because I just got this today.
Good evening, Roman Bonislavsky, Ron and Roman for the record. This is an actual rendering of the proposed patio that faces East Grand River. When Peter reached out to us and suggested that we should have this information together prior to the city council meeting, and we thought it would be appropriate, since we were able to complete it, to also include it with his package right here. So from what I understand, there was some confusion with regards to the openness of the building, and it is fully enclosed with no operable windows but for a door out of the stairwell and an entry door on the rear of the building facing the alley. But on the front of the building, we are proposing the glass nearest to us on the right-hand side is a glass panel separating an interior stairwell between the two floors. Then we have a service man door, and then we have a 20-foot garage door, overhead sectional door that opens up. This is oriented with a solid wing wall on both sides. It's oriented so it's opened only towards East Grand River. That opening currently shows what's called an isinglass and canvas enclosure, and I provided Peter also with all the information associated. It was part of the marine industry. It's what they make clear vinyl enclosures and windowing for boats. And so we're proposing that space will have a hydronically heated concrete slab in it, overhead natural gas infrared heaters, so you're warm both from the feet and from your head. Keeping your ankles warm tends to make the entire body much more comfortable in an outdoor situation. And that winter closure, here's examples. These are actually just taken from the internet showing what we were rendering in our proposed view, but you'll see these specific examples all have that isinglass and canvas closure system that's incorporated into it. When not in use, it rolls up on the outside of a beam and it just stays in a tied up, rolled up version that you never see. So for the entire comfortable season, 8-9 months in the year, that would remain in an up position at all times. And then when the weather becomes inclement, it gets put down and basically stays down. But for those freak occurrences on December 20th where it's 65 degrees outside and nobody expected it, and that's an opportunity to open it up. Peter, that was specific, the specific request there, and
Yeah.
you saw the overhead garage door. We showed it down to indicate that that building is fully enclosed up to that point of the garage door, and that garage door opens and becomes part of the open patio expression onto East Grand River. So that was the clarity there. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question about that?
Absolutely.
Specifically, the garage door goes all the way to the floor.
That's correct.
So when it's open, it's just a flat floor with full access.
With tables on the inside, tables on the outside.
And when you are seating people in that outer, let's call it outdoor
Yes.
area, will the garage door always be open?
For the most part, yes, it would be. And because of the heating system that's being provided out there, it's intended that we're able to utilize this patio not just 3 seasons in the year, but year-round. But for those few 15-degree or 10-degree February days that we get where no matter what, it's just impossible to try to habitate that zone.
And then just one last question. Then do the patrons walk in and out through the garage door? Or-
Typically, yes, unless for some reason there might be a private event that's occurring out there, and the health department requires the provision of a manned service door, and that manned service door is there also.
So patrons might use that under some other
They might
circumstances
use
when the
the-
garage door is closed.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you mind if I continue, and then
Please.
we'll pull you back up? Okay. Thank you for that. How do I? Oh, I'm not sharing, right? Go good. All right. Back to reality. Okay, I'd like to continue, if you don't mind, just a couple other things. So I just think that's an important point to make sure that everyone understands kind of the enclosure of the building, where the open spaces are, and where that noise may be projecting or where it may be heard. It's not. That doesn't mean there may still be concerns, but I wanted to at least clarify that. So construction staging, that was a discussion that at the last meeting, certainly with other projects that have been going on around the downtown area, it's certainly always a challenge. At this time, so there are no conditions related to construction staging at this point. We're not prepared. I think any city department is prepared at this point to specifically locate where a future dumpster or portable bathroom for construction workers may be located. What I have included in the conditions, and I'm going to go through those in detail in a minute here, was a condition that, let me just read it exactly. So prior to construction, the applicant shall arrange a pre-construction meeting with, I've included here certainly city staff, adjacent residents would be invited to discuss construction staging and logistics. Because there really is, I think logistics is the best way to describe it. It's a collaboration between our building division, our public works and environmental services division. And I actually don't have a large role in how all that kind of plays out, but that's all the players involved. So what we're proposing here, and I think is good practice with any construction project that's happening, certainly around residential areas, is that a meeting is held so everyone understands how it all be laid out. I do also include in my memo here just a note about the construction noise. So the city has a noise ordinance that touches us on a variety of topics, but specific to construction, it limits construction to occurring only between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m., Monday through Sunday, actually. So that's on construction station. Hours of operation, there were a couple of different questions about hours of operation, not only of this business, but of surrounding businesses. So specifically, so the applicant has conveyed in their application, general hours 11 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week. Possible other later hours as needed, special events occurring or something else, they may want to be open later. So B3 zoning, where this project is located, does not have any limits on hours of operation. And you'll see that probably with some of the other tenants that are in the downtown area. They operate often late. So there was a question from one of our commissioners, actually he's not here tonight, but about the hours of operation at other restaurants in that same block that were granted special use permits. But the question was specific to, did the special use permit limit their hours of operation? So I did a little bit of research on this. And so there's a table in the staff memo, and I'll go over it really briefly, that shows the other restaurants. So there's 4 other restaurants in the block. There's Buffalo Wild Wings, Tin Can, Omi Sushi, and Baps Barbecue. So in the staff memo, I've noted the posted closing time of those facilities, as well as what the SUP required them to close. So for example, Buffalo Wild Wings, they close at 11, their SUP allows them to be open until 2. Tin Can closes at 2. There was no limitation in their special use permit. Omi Sushi closes at 9:30. They were required by the SUP to close at 10. Babs Barbecue closes at 9. And this is all just based on Google. They may occasionally change different hours, but they close at 9. They're required to close at 9:30 by their SUP. So that's within the realm of possibilities in terms of limiting the conditions. And we'll get into conditions here in a bit. So, but it is clear to me that over the years that special use permits have included conditions that limit hours of operation. Also, you'll see when we get to the conditions, there very commonly, there's pretty much every restaurant in the last 10 or 20 years that has served alcohol, there's been a condition limiting persons under the age of 21 to not being in the facility after 11 without a parent or guardian. I did some research. There's no state law that requires that, but it is apparently something that I don't have my finger on the pulse of the restaurant industry whatsoever, but it hasn't been coldly received by restaurants to date. There also have been consistent conditions related to outdoor seating areas being vacated or closed by midnight, regardless of the hours of the interior restaurant. So I've included all of those in the conditions, and again, I'm going to go through those in detail because I do think it's an important component of this. Outdoor seating along Grand River Avenue. I did confirm there are no plans to relocate the bicycle parking spaces on Grand River. I think the applicant noted at the meeting they're perfectly happy with where those are at and actually enjoy the location. So the seasonal outdoor area is about 6.5 feet away from that bicycle parking spaces. It looks like I committed to displaying a diagram about the streetscape. I do not have that with me tonight, but I can provide something if it becomes necessary. So the space above Clever Clover, another commissioner asked about that. There is a door as you walk along Grand River Avenue, and when you get to the Clever Clover space, there's a mystery sign on next to the Clever Clover business that says 319.5 upstairs. So I had not confirmed anything until very recently, but that is not a residence. It's not registered as a rental. Some historical Googling indicates that it was an office space. It's been used for a variety of things over the years. It's not currently being used. Confirmed with the building owner, it appears to be currently vacant, but I can definitely confirm that it's not an apartment. Provided in the staff memo tonight is a recommendation. So recommendations are always written in the affirmative, and then they either are approved or fail to be approved. So that's why it's written in the affirmative to recommend approval. So the Planning Commission has several options. You can recommend approval as is, approval with conditions, or denial of the special use permit and site plan application. What I've provided here is a draft motion, again, it's just a suggestion of a motion that could be used to recommend approval. I've provided some findings that you may want to base an approval on, but then I've also provided, looks like 27 conditions. That is one, depending on if I know at least one of our members prints the packet shortly after receipt. There has been one condition added since the packet was posted, and I'll go over that. But I won't read all of these, but I want to read a couple because some of them are not boilerplate. So we always approve projects according to a specific plan, and that basically ties the applicant to the plan that the commission and council see. So the first couple are related to just the floor plans and the building elevations, the site plan, so that locks that in. There was a letter that you saw from the Department of Public Works and Environmental Services. This condition requires that the plan be amended to address those notes, and they were related specifically to utilities. I asked for and have now received details on the second story outdoor seating area and how that might be used in winter months and the materials proposed to encapsulate that space. I did forward what you saw earlier to the fire marshal for consideration. I haven't heard back yet, but I did send that along. And that's specific to the material being used and the heating element. So those are two things that we'll need fire marshal review ultimately before it could open that way. The couple generic ones about utilities here. I mentioned the condition related to a pre-construction meeting. Well, again, I just think that's good practice. That ensures that everyone is on the same page and has an opportunity to raise concerns at the time. We have requested a roof plan showing the mechanical equipment. There is a parapet wall. So the applicant, and this came up, I think, at one of my very first meetings. Actually, I think at the Graduate Hotel was screening of mechanical equipment. And it's an issue that is close to me as well, because it's something you see, and I think that is part of the process here is finding ways to shield items like that. So there's a 5-foot parapet wall on the roof of the building. There are proposed. I'm sure they'll have all the typical equipment up there, but we are asking for a plan for that. But I am confident at this point with the parapet wall that those aren't going to be visible from anybody walking by. Certainly maybe as you drive into town at elevation, someone might see them, but we can't do much about that. Okay, roof plan, site lighting can be no taller than 15 feet. It has to be directed downwards. We will not allow a dumpster in the public alley. The city has a dumpster room nearby in the parking garage that the applicant would work with the city then to use that space. I just want to roll through these really quickly here. A separate approval will be required for that ground floor outdoor seating area. Right now, the city has been considering, if you walk around the downtown at all, you'll see a couple of restaurants that have expanded into the public right-of-way to provide outdoor dining. That is a specific program that allows that on a temporary basis. And some of the elements related to that are them submitting liability insurance for the use of since it is public space, allowing handicap accessibility around that space. So in this, what you're seeing downtown right now on Albert Street is closed, so the restaurants adjacent to that are allowed to use Albert Street as the sidewalk, so they're able to expand out further onto what is typically the public sidewalk out to kind of the roadway. So that's what you're seeing there. The city council will be contemplating a more permanent policy. In a nutshell, over the last couple years, the city's been responding to opportunities to help restaurants along with COVID. So they had a couple temporary policies that allowed for this temporary outdoor expansion into the public right-of-way, which this would be. So the applicant's proposing to have this ground floor outdoor space. Now, most of it's on their property, but some of it would encroach into the public right-of-way. So this fall, council will be discussing a permanent policy rather than kind of a renewing year-to-year policy. And I fully expect that they'll be accommodating this type of use. But I'm simply noting in the conditions that will be required in the future. So it's not granted now. We don't have the ability to grant it permanently now, but in the future that there will be something new to address that space. But I am confident that the result of that will be allowing the space as long as there is adequate room for public maneuvering. Long-winded explanation of a short sentence, but I think it's worth noting. There are capacity limits, so the restaurants proposed at 290 total people, but 250 diners. So we have placed a condition on here that would be a not to exceed number. I did include that condition about persons under the age of 21 entering the premises after 11 without a parent or guardian. They must obviously obtain a liquor license. That is a concurrent process that actually will be discussed at tomorrow's Downtown Development Authority meeting. So the DDA acts like the Planning Commission in this capacity. They're advisory to liquor license and would be making a recommendation to council, who will then consider that when all of this goes to city council I'll say it again later, but June 21. The requirement for a city entertainment permit. There was a lot of discussion about the entertainment permit at the last meeting. Planning Commission is not in a position to put conditions on the entertainment permit. I was simply at the last meeting noting that it is required. So City Council will make a determination on that and place any restrictive conditions that they may choose to do so at that time. Restaurant, same story for a restaurant permit is required before they're operating. I've included just by default that the restaurant shall close by 2 a.m. Certainly Planning Commission may consider something differently, but I wanted to provide at least a baseline. I did also include a condition about the outdoor area on the second floor, and I guess also for any outdoor space being vacated by midnight every day. I also included a condition about no live or recorded music shall be provided in the outdoor service area, which is audible from any adjacent residential property. In my research on restaurant approvals over the last 20 years, that's a common condition that's been placed on restaurants that do have these outdoor spaces. So they can have music, it just can't be audible, and then we do have a complaint process to deal with that. And then final condition about, and this is the new condition, so if you looked at the packet early in the week, you may not have seen this condition about all deliveries providing goods and services to the restaurant, so exclusively use the building entrance located on the public alley side of the building and not on Grand River. In this case, the Grand River entrance is not particularly helpful for deliveries, but we do include that because the goal is to allow deliveries through the alleys. As noted earlier, there are a couple letters. So there was a letter that was physically handed out at the last meeting. I did include that in the meeting packet. And then there was an email that I received from Mr. Carroll, who's in the room tonight, that's included in your meeting packet as well. So available for any questions you might have. Obviously, you've met the applicants here as well to shed any further light on anything that's still outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Menzer? Thank you for the thoroughness of that report. Truly. Commissioner Wolf?
I have some questions about conditions 23 through 26. It uses the term outdoor service area. And I believe you just said that's intended to refer to those areas on both levels, right? On number 23, I think it would be clearer if we said the outdoor service areas. Is that acceptable to you? We could make that as a change later on when we move this.
Yes, sir.
That would mean what you have here anyway, right?
Yes, sir.
On 25, or 24, it specifically says the ground level outdoor service area, and that really does apply only to the ground level one, right? The fencing and so forth.
Yeah, it's specific to the ground level, and the reason for that is if alcohol is served in there, well, to delineate the space, but also if they are serving alcohol out there, the Liquor Control Commission will require fencing.
Yep, understood. And then 25, I'm not sure about that one. Should that say outdoor service areas? Is that envisioning the furniture on the second level as well, or?
It was envisioning anywhere where furniture may be, just to ensure that those are put away. So yes, it could apply to the second story as well. I can make that change.
I guess the reason I ask it is, it seems though for the second level, it's not going to be quite clear what seasonal means, because they have that heated and they're anticipating using it. At what point would we ever enforce that? Decide, okay, it's December, they haven't had anyone sitting out there, we're going to tell them to move the furniture, or?
I guess, yeah, it's kind of a catch-all. I envisioned it more for the first floor, just to ensure that those got put away. We may not be able to see anything on the second floor anyway, so the walls that'll be up. But
I'm just wondering if we
taken.
could change that to say for the ground, what does the other one say? The ground level furniture and equipment use in conjunction with the ground level outdoor service area, and still accomplish what we're trying to do.
Yeah, thank you.
That's the area we're really concerned about, not having furniture sitting there. And then in number 26, again, I think I'd like to see it say outdoor service areas, because that's referring to both of them. And then number 26, two questions. One, it seems somewhat ambiguous to me, and I'll tell you the two clarifications I'd like to see somehow, but it starts out saying no live or recorded music shall be provided in the outdoor service areas. Well, the applicant has indicated that they normally have recorded music playing in the restaurant, I believe all the time, or very, very commonly. In a certain sense, as soon as they open that door from the inside, they will have recorded music in the outdoor service area, right? So it says shall be provided in the outdoor service area. I just want to make sure that doesn't mean they have to have speakers out there or something like that. It really means if the music is there, it can be heard by the patrons there, correct? Even if it's coming from inside the restaurant.
Yes.
It's the language provided in that I'm asking about.
Understood, yeah. So I see your point. So your point being provided in means the music is originating from that space versus maybe being heard from inside when the door is open or if the garage door is up.
Right.
The intent was to limit any live or recorded music from impacting any adjacent residential property, but I agree that it's not as clear as it could be.
Right, we're not trying to limit that restriction only to music from speakers in that outdoor area, right? That's. And then if you're ready, one more clarification. Audible from any adjacent residential property. Well, I'm wondering about that language, where that came from, because adjacent normally means adjoining, touching, next door, and there are no adjacent residential properties here. There are some that might be called nearby, or so the way it's written, I would say it's impossible for anything from this to be audible from any adjacent property in normal usage. So what are we trying to say here
No, that's that's a fair point. I'm just trying to. I thought it was based on an actual, also poorly phrased provision.
Yeah, that's why I was
Of our
wondering if
ordinance.
this came from the ordinance or language we have used before, or...
It is, yeah, it is. It mimics the language that has been used, and I'm not saying that it's. I'm not saying it was clear in other cases, but it mimics the language from these other conditions on other restaurants from the last couple decades. So, and frankly, I didn't think as loud. I didn't think about it in the same way.
Unless somebody moves into the upstairs above Clever Clover.
Right.
Yeah, the intent is not to the intent is not to be as specific to adjacent properties, whether or not they're adjacent. It really should probably say nearby
Sure.
or.
That's
Absolutely.
exactly what I'm getting at
Okay,
here.
yeah, good point. I can make that change or clarify it.
Well, I think we would probably have to modify that as we
Tonight,
approve
yes.
the condition.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, that was all my questions there.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Commissioner Wolf. Vice Chair?
Yeah, just a handful of questions. So, just to completely clarify this, so your understanding of this structure, this building, how it's designed, is acoustically, the noise will be directed towards the south, so towards campus, because there's only one door in the back, and there's essentially a system of garage doors in the front that opens up, and that's where the noise would be distributed, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. There's really
Okay.
only one
I thought I-
space where it would go out on that second, well, the first floor when it's open through the outdoor seating area, and then the second floor where there is the open space.
Okay, and then my second question would be, and I know we touched on this a bit, but regarding construction staging, I just don't recall that ever coming up before any other planning commission meeting. Is that in our purview at all during this process? I just don't recall it being so. I know several people have brought that up, but I just don't know what say we really have in that issue.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's not really. It's really kind of a logistics issue that we need to work out between city departments, the applicant, and their construction crew. In my professional experience, what typically happens is we'll have what they call a pre-construction meeting, and we get all those guys in the room and we talk about everything that's going on. There could be other projects going on. There could be roads that are closed. There could be major deliveries that have to happen. There could be events like Art Festival that happen. So the idea is to get everybody together. I mean, they're also, and there's residents, obviously they need to get home. They need to sleep. They, need to enjoy their peaceful enjoyment of their properties. So the idea is all to get together and talk about all these things and find the best way to carry out the project with the most minimal impacts. I'm not saying that there aren't impacts, but attempt to mitigate them as best as possible.
Got it.
So
Okay.
so in this case, the condition is just requiring that conversation happens. I don't see that it's a common condition that you've had in the past, but it seemed viable to me. But that's certainly up to you guys.
Yeah, I don't recall ever seeing a condition like that. So, but just my point is that is not an issue outside of that condition being included. That's going to be solved today before the planning commission.
Right.
And then just because of Commissioner Wolf's comments in 26 with some of the potential issues and ambiguity of the language there, I think it's incredibly low standard. So to be audible from any adjacent property, there's no hour limits for that. There's no time of the day that any noise would essentially be permissible by an adjacent, and that is open to interpretation and perhaps requires some clarification, but adjacent residential property. So I just don't know if I'm a fan of that particular condition because of just the variety of reasons that were outlined by Commissioner Wolf and the incredibly difficult standard for that restaurant to meet. I think perhaps an alternative would be better, but nothing comes to mind right now.
Any other questions for Mr. Menzer?
I think he has.
May I clarify something
I'm
on
sorry,
the noise?
yes, of
No,
course.
that's fine. Should I be proper? The city, like I mentioned before, the city does have a noise ordinance. I tend not to kind of replicate some provisions that we already have in approvals, but just something to think about. Basically, it's a civil infraction. Anything that's outside of a residential district after 11 o'clock, essentially, is a civil infraction. So if that happens, we use the police to enforce that. They would have to visit the site And I mean, it's not they've done it before. I guess it's not an uncommon thing. But we do have existing laws on the books to deal with excessive noise, in this case after 11 o'clock, for non-residential areas. So whether or not that addresses kind of it's not a condition on this specific use. The condition on this use would just be the vacant, leaving those outdoor spaces. But we do have laws on the books to deal with noise. That's it, sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Menzer? All right, thank you. Does the applicant care to add anything to Mr. Menzer's presentation? You're here, okay, thank you. All right then, as I mentioned before, the public hearing on this matter is still open. We did receive, as Mr. Menzer had indicated, a letter from Vicki Graham that we actually received prior to our last meeting, but sort of officially in our packet, and then 2 letters that Mr. Carroll had found or sent or transferred to us that was part of our packet as well. So, written communication. Now I'll invite anybody who wishes to make comments to the commission or direct comments or questions to the applicant to come forward. I do have 1 card, and I'll invite Mr. Carroll to come up first and comment. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. First, as I said in the last meeting, I'm very supportive of this restaurant. I want to make sure that's clear. I'm not opposed to the restaurant at all. I'm just opposed to a couple of concerns that we have. In fact, we're so supportive of it that we went to their Howell restaurant and had a wonderful dinner. Great food. If you get a chance to try their pesto dip, for a garlic lover, you'll eat it with a spoon. It's amazing. We loved it. We had a great time. Thank you. We would love to see you next door. You've all got the email that I sent and the FOIA request. I'll let that speak for itself as a cautionary tale of the experiences other communities have had. Okay? I can either go 2 ways right now, and I'll let you pick the way. How's that? One is I could take issue with about 8 things on here, one of which I can take issue with about 8 things that are on here, one of which I don't believe you have the legal authority to impose, which is an age discriminatory standard. And I think you'd be in federal world with that one. Or we can simply talk about a couple of words in 1 line. I'll let you pick.
You decide. I prefer option B, but have at it.
I prefer option B,
All right,
too.
well,
It's been a
let's do
long
that
day. I'd rather limit the
You're
amount
the
of
one
talk.
speaking.
It's already been touched upon, so we'll just fast forward right to condition number 26. I'm not sure why we would treat the people who live in front of it differently than people who live behind it. To me, that's discriminatory as well. That you would have an ordinance or a restriction here, condition here that says that it's only based on the music emanating from the front. You can walk by a number of the downtown bars and hear music 360 degrees. The walls don't stop it. The doors don't stop it. If it's loud, it's loud. The concept of adjacent has come up. I do believe that the city has in its ordinance for the notification of adjacent properties within 300 feet. And maybe Mr. Menzer could look that up right quick, through the chair, of course. But I believe if that's the case, that notification of 300 feet surrounding the address, which is the initial notification for the hearings for this, is because those are the people who are believed, or the entities that are believed to be impacted by this project. It would make sense that the people that are within that same 300 feet are the ones who are protected from the noise. It's the adjacents. And I will leave that language, hopefully we can get it cleared up before we decide this meeting is closed, so that we all know what's closed and what the final is. But the line that I'm really interested in is at number 26. No live or recorded music shall be provided in the outdoor service area, which is audible from any adjacent residential property. Assuming that adjacent is that 300-foot radius. My concern is in any outdoor service area, in the outdoor service area. I'd simply like to change the outdoor to any. plain and simple. It shouldn't be heard regardless if it's the outdoor of the front of the building or the back of the building resonating through the walls. I don't know why the front and the back are being treated differently. Noise is noise, regardless where you live. And if it's coming out of the back because it makes it through the walls, you can walk by a number of the bars around here that are thumping all night long. And I don't want to listen to thumping. Our bedroom is 100 feet away. We're well within that 300 feet notification. We're well within the concernable range of this building. And there is no barriers, not even tree branches between us and this building. We have no ability to put anything up to prevent the noise. Even if we wanted to shelter our place with treescapes, shrubbery, we can't do that. We have no ability to protect ourselves. All we can do, if you leave it up to the other ordinances, is put the burden on public safety. And that is written to be a violation of what this meeting is supposed to be, to stop the burden on public safety. Our first 911 call to the city, if we don't resolve this in an amicable way, the first 911 call placed will start off this way. Per the guidance and the requirements of this meeting tonight, per Daniel Bowman and per Peter Menser, I am calling 911 in order to report what we have to do because the provisions tonight did not protect the citizens. That will be our only means to solve this problem. And that will be my announcement each and every time I'm required to call 911.
That'll be fun.
Citizens of America have the great opportunity of freedom of speech to redress their government. And we'll use that. Redressing our government doesn't have to be in the same room at the same time. I will redress it through the 911 calls as well. Okay. So I would much rather settle number 26. That was one of my 8 other venues to go down tonight. I'd rather not go down the rest of them. Can we solve it number 26 tonight?
We'll see, right? I mean, ultimately, that you know full well that what this board provides is a recommendation to City Council, and that ultimately
Right.
City Council makes that decision.
And I see the whole list of recommendations, sir. And I'd just like to make sure that we're all agreeing on the same thing at the close of business.
You're talking about the list of conditions that.
Yes.
So, well, there's actually 27 now, but the conditions.
Sorry,
that
27.
Would be, that's fine, they'd be appended to the special use permit,
Right.
or the site plan and special use
Sure.
permit application, all right?
I just want to know what they are before we close this opportunity to speak are.
Sure, and they were in the packet that was
I
part
get
of.
that, but we have a lot of discussion on number 26. And I think number 26 can solve everybody's concerns.
All right, I understand now.
So I'm hoping that we know before this is, I don't want to find out after the fact when it's too late to talk, that things got agreed upon afterwards, behind the scenes, behind closed doors, via emails to the group, without the purview of an Open Meetings Act.
Yeah, so that doesn't
does not
happen.
happen.
That doesn't happen.
I get that. So how do we solve this?
No, understood, right, and that we're about to have a discussion about that, but with the understanding that, as Vice Chair Sullivan seems to suggest, it might not be within our purview to actually establish that. We're about to talk about that, with the understanding that I know full well that City Council will be more than happy to listen to that, and should be. And that's ultimately, that they're the ones that are going to be providing the entertainment license, which I think, or approving the entertainment license, which I suspect is exactly where this, item number 26, takes place.
There's plenty of other things that we're putting here as conditions. I don't know why we can't solve one of them. To say that it might not be under the purview of this group, there's already one in here that I believe is in violation of federal age discrimination, plain and simple.
Right.
But yet that's in there. But we can't talk about noise. We can't solve the noise
didn't
one,
say
but
we
we're going to
couldn't.
leave discrimination in there?
I didn't say we couldn't talk about noise. We're about to talk about that.
Can I ask a question, just a clarifying question? Of course. So, in a perfect world, what would you like number 26 to say?
That the people in the affected area, being the 300 foot of notification,
Yeah,
shall not be disturbed by noise. That's what I'm trying to get towards.
okay.
Now, understand, I get it, you've got a noise disturbance ordinance, but if it's in this, then it reduces that burden on public safety. I don't mind calling 911 every time I need to. I don't. I'm very familiar with the system, I'm okay working with it. But I don't want to, because these meetings are meant to prevent that. The police here are very busy. They don't need to be chasing down sounds. I get it. Because the noise turns off when they pull up. And there's very little that they can do, and their peace cannot be disturbed by law. So they can't make the complaint, only we can. And I don't want to make complaints. I'd rather just go there and eat pizza. Maybe learn how to play bocce. I'd rather be a supporting neighbor than an arguing neighbor. And this is where that argument stops. Right here, right now, today, we can solve it, or we can forever live with the legacy that will be. So I'd rather solve it if we can.
Understood. Thank you. Did you want to continue with the other 7
I'd like to
points?
stay in here until we solve it.
That's-
I'll go down the other 7 if we want, but it's
Well,
just,
I'm going to ask other people if they want to approach the podium, if that's okay. And then we're going to discuss it amongst ourselves if nobody has other questions for Mr. Carroll.
when you-
Yeah, stand where you like.
Can the audience ask questions?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Please.
If you would, yeah, but I'd ask that you take the mic. Thank you.
By the way, thank you for coming to my restaurant.
Thank you.
I'm curious, was the music too loud for you?
No.
Oh, it's going to be the exact same in this
This
restaurant.
should not be
Yeah,
between
this is not
audience
the
members.
issue.
This is the time for the public to
Yeah,
address
this is the
us.
public part.
It's not time for them to.
Fair enough.
Right.
Fair
Talk
enough.
to each other. This is a breach of protocol to.
Go.
That-
Yeah, I mean, we have every intention of following the city noise ordinances. I mean, I have other restaurants in other cities. I've never once had anybody called to the restaurant because it was too loud. And this will be the same thing. I'm not going to violate any city noise ordinances. Should anything be amended? Absolutely not. But of course, we're going to follow the city noise ordinances.
Mr. Carroll, just a second. Did you want to?
That was.
Oh, okay, thank you. If you're done, Mr. Carroll, then I'm going to ask other people if they want to approach.
If they're saying that they won't violate it, then what's the trouble in taking this out?
I'm sorry?
If they're saying they will not violate the noise ordinance, what's the problem with taking this out?
Okay, understood. I'm going to ask other members of the public if they
Sure.
would like to make comment. Is there anybody else present that would like to make comment on or raise questions for the commissioner or for the applicant regarding this application? I'm sorry.
I guess
Commissioner
I
Williams.
just wanted to make a comment because I think Mr. Carroll just asked a question that I think maybe bears a response. I think you said if the applicant said that they will comply with the noise ordinances, then why not take out number 26? Well, number 26 is a condition on their application that requires that compliance. So I don't think it would be in the interest of your argument to seek the removal of number 26. I think maybe you're seeking something a little
Point of
different.
order here. I think we need to close the public
I will
hearing
do
and
that.
then have this
Very well.
discussion.
That will do that, yep. So is there nobody else present or remote? Okay. That being the case, I will close the public hearing and return discussion back to the commission to proceed with the application in front of us. Thank you. Vice Chair.
Again, I point to the phrasing of number 26. I think if that's the intent, we could change it to say something along the lines of the applicant shall follow all applicable noise ordinances of the city of East Lansing, as opposed to the standard, which is here, which is they can't be audible from any adjacent residential property, which I think is an impossible standard that could mean almost anything. So that's my perspective. I think either that at this point or strike it. I think those are the only two options.
Commissioner Williams.
I agree. I had basically written down the exact same language. The applicant shall comply with all City of East Lansing noise ordinances. I think that addresses the issue. Doesn't it have a vague standard that I'm not really sure what it means? It's stronger language.
Commissioner Wolf.
For Mr. Menzer, you just read us, I think, the portion of the city ordinance. Do you still have that there to?
I do, yeah.
Could you read that again, just so we know what we're?
Well, there's a couple different things that apply here. So, and I can't read the whole, so there's a division in our offenses against public peace and order article in chapter 26, which is titled offenses. And there's a lot of information here about noise in a lot of different contexts, from shouting and whistling to animal and bird noises, construction noises, that kind of thing, air conditioning, air handling devices. So, and there's a couple different things. And one thing I do want to clarify, that all of these noise ordinance, any violation of these are enforced by the police in any scenario. whether or not the special use permit is applied, whether or not there's a special use permit. So I think the relevant provisions here, there's a couple different ones. There's one that's called, it talks about penalties and civil infractions. So it basically says any person that commits a violation of these outside of a residential district or within a residential district between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. shall be deemed responsible for municipal civil infraction. And that's defined, it's a certain, basically it's a ticket. And then there is, and actually that goes further, between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Oh, that's not relevant in this scenario. Sorry, I'm kind of reading this on the fly here.
Yeah.
If there's a second violation or subsequent violations, they're guilty of a misdemeanor. So there are, I guess the point being that there are laws on the books to handle this kind of thing. Again, the condition that was included in the draft conditions was boilerplate language from previous approvals that I threw in kind of to start the conversation. It wasn't fully fleshed out yet, and that's what this process is meant to.
But can you find what it says about the noise? That's what I wanted to hear. What does it say about?
Like a specific decibel level?
Or where it's audible, or?
It doesn't, no, it just says, I think there may be something at the beginning.
Sorry to do this.
No, it's okay. I mean,
It would have been better to have asked last week.
This can be a dirty process sometimes, or not dirty, but a clunky process sometimes.
Just so we know what it says about audibility or compared to what's written in here right now.
I'm not seeing anything specific to whom this applies. I think it's potentially anyone.
Well, I recall in residential areas, it says something about must not, or anything that's audible beyond the property, or some language like that. And that's what I wanted to hear. If
Yeah, I'm
you
looking
could
for
find
that.
it.
I typically would see a decibel level by at a certain, like at the property line measured. I'm not seeing that. It doesn't mean it's not in here, but I don't have a lot of experience with this particular
All right,
section of the ordinance.
That's probably sufficient. I don't want to take up that much time. I think it is reasonable to go with the city ordinance here.
Sure. Bless you.
Peter, just curious, are you looking at section 26-81?
Yeah.
Okay. It's pretty extensive.
All right, might I suggest that we start with the motion and work our way through some of the changes that are proposed in the conditions. Commissioner Wolf, thank you.
I'm going to try not to read all of this, but I move that we recommend approval of the special use permit and site plan application from Ron and Roman Incorporated to renovate the building at 321 East Grand River Avenue to facilitate the establishment of a restaurant serving alcohol for on-site consumption with the 27 conditions in the staff report, based on the following 4 findings, which I'm going to abbreviate a bit: that the proposed project meets the stated intent of the B3 zoning district, the proposed project meets the standards of review for site plan approval, the proposed use of the property meets the standards of review for special use permit, and the proposal meets the specific standards for businesses selling alcoholic beverages. And that would be the end of the motion.
Thank you.
But including the 27 conditions.
Yes, indeed. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Wolf and seconded by Vice Chair Sullivan to recommend approval of the site plan and special use permit as outlined in the staff report. Is there any discussion on that motion? Commissioner Wolf.
Yes. I want to move a couple of amendments that I talked about earlier. In condition 23, change that to be plural, so it will say the outdoor service areas shall be vacated by 12 midnight daily,
Can I combine some of these into one motion here?
I don't see why not.
I doubt they
I
would
can't
get
imagine-
voted on. I mean,
Exactly.
People would vote on them differently. In condition number 25, adding the term ground level. So it will say future furniture and equipment used in conjunction with the ground level outdoor service area shall be stored in an inconspicuous space, etc. And I'll leave it at that, just those two for now.
Those are being, you're amending the motion? Or you're just
That's a
giving your-
motion
Your motion to amend, thank
Needs
you.
a second. And,
Yep, thank you.
A second.
Okay, that's been moved by Commissioner Wolf and seconded by Commissioner Williams to amend the main motion as just outlined, specifically regarding condition 23 and 25. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That motion carries. Brings us back to the main motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Looks like not.
I think we need another amendment.
I'd
Isn't there?
like to-
Yeah.
Some
Commissioner
consensus
Williams?
for another.
Unless, let's see, unless the vice chair was, did I jump in there
No,
too
I was
soon?
typing something up, but if you're ready to go.
It's pretty simple. I'd like to amend condition number 26 by striking the current language and replacing it with, "The restaurant shall comply with all applicable City of East Lansing noise ordinances."
I think, would we want to cite this specific ordinance? I think it's 2681.
I don't want to leave one out in case
Okay.
on this
Right.
quick notice that we haven't found any that might be applicable that we haven't identified. I'd be happy to do that, but what do you think?
There's
There's been a comment, but I think
Thank
maybe
you.
we need a second first.
No, there is a second.
There is-
We have a motion and a second. Is there a discussion on that motion? Commissioner Williams? Commissioner Wolf?
I was just going to say that there are a number of instances where we make similar statements without saying exactly the part of the ordinance we're referring to. So I'm perfectly happy with that language, with all, I forgot what it said, but all East Lansing
applicable
City,
City of East Lansing
East
noise
Lansing
ordinances.
noise ordinance.
Who is the support on that one?
Sullivan.
Thank you.
I'm just going to say, I think that this is the right direction to go. I think that this does alleviate some of the other concerns too about the noise coming specifically from the patio or being from the front or from the back. It just addresses any related noise issues at this specific restaurant. And it ties it in neatly to ordinances that the city already has in place rather than reinventing the wheel with what I thought was ambiguous language.
Any other discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed? That motion carries, bringing us back to the main motion again. Any discussion on that motion? Commissioner Wolf?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this restaurant. We haven't quite seen anything like this in a number of years, and I'm thinking that they're going to be a great addition to the city. So I'm glad this has come forward.
I'll echo that as well, and if at some point during, presuming this proceeds, if you get to the point where you're doing value engineering, I'll encourage you to keep that lower awning. As somebody that walks that street quite a bit, get caught in the rain, it's nice to have, periodic shelter to hide under. Any other discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I'm excited as well. So just echoing those sentiments as somebody that has young kids and lives very close to downtown, I'm excited about the prospect of a new restaurant, and I'm hopeful that there will be good new partners with the city and coordinate with the community.
All right. If there's no other discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the main motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you all. that will bring us back to our agenda.
Chair, may I make a brief?
Of course.
So the public hearing for the city council level
Yes,
will
please.
be June 21. So that's a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, June 21.
Thank you. We have no new business. Do any commissioners have any concerns? Commissioner Wolf?
Yeah, because of the discussion we just had, it reminded me of something that I hope I can talk about in just a few minutes, but this issue of entertainment and noise in the downtown is something that came up in Ann Arbor just over 2 years ago. It was at the end of 2019. There were a number of people on city council there who proposed establishing something they were calling a historic entertainment district in the downtown. Their thought was that their noise ordinance, which is similar to ours, was too restrictive. They were having, just as we have been trying, having more people move into the downtown. And there were some complaints coming from those new residents about existing entertainment businesses, about the noise from them. And those who proposed this wanted, the idea was to try to promote Ann Arbor as an entertainment destination and define an area of the downtown where the noise ordinance did not really apply as strictly as it did elsewhere where there were residences. And there seemed to be a fair amount of support for it. Excuse me. The mayor was in favor, several city council members were, but eventually it was dropped, and I don't quite know why. It didn't ever seem to come to a full discussion as far as I could tell. They did propose there was a draft ordinance that came before them, and then it never followed through the process. So there are others who are thinking that maybe these noise ordinances, it was similar to what the Vice Chair Sullivan was mentioning, that I believe their current ordinance is similar to ours, where it says you can't have audible noise, which is a pretty low or pretty strict standard, depending on how you think of it. And that's what was bothering the mayor and council members who were in favor of changing it. That they're saying that for a city with entertainment in it, that's being too strict. And that if people choose to live downtown, they'll have to accept a certain amount of that. So I just wanted to point out that it's not a problem unique to us.
Thank you. Any other concerns? Well, then a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Sullivan and seconded by Commissioner Lapine. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed. We are adjourned at 8:45. Thank you, everyone.